My name is Bess Mwachinemere and I am thrilled to have you here. Hit the like button, subscribe and follow us on social media if you're not already to be notified of future updates. Hello and welcome to Introduction to Nigerian Literature. I am going to be running through this course in less than 30 minutes, so let's dive right in. Basically, everything written is literature. Example, the leaflets or the manuals or guides that come with new goods to tell consumers how the products are used. So, every single discipline, mathematics, English, social sciences, humanities, you name it, has its own literature. So it is important for us to know exactly the literature we are going to be talking about in this course. Nkem Oko categorized literature into literature of knowledge, which refers to the literature that gives information, and literature of power, which is more of imaginative. In this course, we'll be looking at the imaginative type of literature. Imaginative literature is a powerful form of human expression in an artistic manner. It is an art that conveys its message through language, and through it we learn more about people, social issues, religion, and the world around us. Literature, therefore, is a composition in language, that's words, which tells stories, represents, mirrors, enacts, or dramatizes real-life situations, advocates ideas, and expresses emotions. Literature is a form of expression in which ideas of local and universal interest are presented in the form of poetry, romance, history, biography, essays, and other forms of writing. So it is used to denote a piece of writing that deals with a particular subject. In simple terms, oral literature is a spoken imaginative communication that is not written but transmitted through the word of the mouth for entertainment and sometimes edification of the audience. Oral literature means literature that is not written but spoken, preserved and transmitted from one generation to the other in that form. Oral literature reflects the people's way of life. Oral literature, like the written form, is categorized under three broad genres, and I've listed them here. Before we had written literature like novels, we had our cultures and stories that recorded some of those cultural beliefs. These stories provide insightful information. We find the people's attitudes to natural phenomena and the way of life of a particular community. The stories are educative while they entertain the audience. They create a nexus between the past and the present. Sometimes, this past dates back to the primordial or prehistoric era. Some Nigerian written prose narratives evolved from the traditional oral narratives. They include myth, legends, folktales, and fables. I am going to explain each of these on the screen in a sentence only to save time. Myth refers to an ancient story or a body of stories that attempt to explicate the early history or origin of a people. Set in primordial times, that is, it is presented as incidents or events that happened in those days. Myth essentially fuse the physical with the metaphysical and the natural with the supernatural. Hence, they cannot be meaningfully subjected to the rules of logic, rationalism, and empiricism. Legend is set in the past but deals with heroic heroes and heroines in a known past. The link between myth and legend is that both are set in the past. However, they differ in nature. Unlike myth, legend has some measure of claim to history in an unknown past. Legend refers to a story that is passed down orally from one generation to another and has its foundation in history. Folktales are narrative stories constructed from the imagination of people over time. They are as old as the culture of the people. The tales may be about human beings or animal community, or both, a mutual interaction. Fables are stories that are considered fictitious and imaginary. They draw their subjects essentially from the animal world. Adults use fables also to teach morals to the young generations. You should note that fables are essentially imaginative and fictitious stories that are not founded in history or reality.
In whatever language, tongue twisters play an important role in the wordcraft education of children. They enhance fluency and the child is groomed to overcome slips of tongue. Listen to this in Igbo. Nwaanyị na-akwa akwa, ị na-akwa akwa na ọkụkọ yiri akwa n'elu akwa ịkwara akwa dị n'elu akwa. The word akwa is repeated 9 times. Another is, I saw Father Francis frying I saw Father Francis frying 4 fresh fish for the few fresh fathers from Calabar. Riddles is also part of oral literature. Riddles are quizzes wrapped up in a figurative language. They help in the process of initiating the child into the culture of his own society. Some examples of riddles from Igbo language are: tell me the plate washed by God that never dries. We say this in Igbo, we call it a wam wam wam. Then the answer is ire, tongue. Tell me 2 people walking under the rain. The rain beats one person but does not beat the other person. Answer is pregnant woman. Proverbs deal with all aspects of life. They are used to emphasize words of the wise. I extensively talked about this in the video, The Rise of Nigerian Literature. The link is below in the description box.
Traditional oral poetry comprises performances in form of songs, chants, or recitations, in which the performer binds himself in advance to follow a certain regular rhythmic pattern. Under this, we have folk songs, which are songs with chloric refrains in a call and answer pattern. In most cases, the song has alternating solo lines and verses that serve as the chorus and refrains.
Again, I am going to be as brief as possible. Musical poetry is poetry in form of chants performed to the accompaniment of music. Lament is personal elegy because it expresses personal grief without reference to any particular event. It could be about the tragic circumstances in the world or other causes of grief in the individual's personal life. Dirge is a type of elegy that is common at funeral or burial ceremonies and is usually musical. Rhapsody is a category of joyous musical poetry. This form of oral poetry, the individual celebrates causes of happiness in his own personal life and in the world around him. Number 2, we have invocative poetry, which addresses the second person in an attitude of veneration or respect. The addressee could be human, plant, animal, or inanimate objects. Under it, we have self-praise poetry, which is a form of poetry in which the poet praises another person and also praises himself. In the traditional Nigerian societies, especially among Hausas and Yorubas, the royal courts that flourished were characterized by wealth, power, and pleasure. Poets were part of the court retinues, and their main specialty in poetry rendition was panegyric, as they composed elaborate praise poems to eulogize their kings and other noblemen. The fourth is the didactic, which teaches moral, spiritual, and philosophical lessons. Narrative is a species of heroic narrative poetry which celebrates the achievements of a hero. Ritual poetry comprises of recitations and speech forms in verse that are spoken, chanted, or recited in magical or religious context. They include all kinds of prayer, divination chants, oracle chants, curses, malediction chants, and incantations by magicians. Finally, casual poetry are poetry of incidental and non-serious type found in various situations in social relationships.
All aspects of oral literature involves one sort of performance or the other. The storyteller performs his story and the poet also performs, but the degree of performance of each genre varies and is not comparable to the traditional dramatic performances. Drama is an art form as an art form thrives on performance because it involves an imitation of an action, an enactment or reenactment of a story in lifelike situations. The aim is to entertain, lampoon, condemn, educate, or inculcate moral values. In all these, action or imitation of an action is involved. The evolutionist school headed by MJC Echero argues that the traditional festivals are not drama but rituals. They reason that this festival emphasizes songs and dances with no attention to plot and dialogue, and insist that until a festival or ritual is forced to yield its story, the dramatic content will remain an integral part of ritual. Echero in his argument insists that there must exist a story to be enacted or imitated for a performance to be classified as drama. The views of the relative school, championed by Osie Enekwe and J.A. Adedeji, is that drama and ritual are reciprocal in function and similar in structure, so one can easily lead to the other. It means that it is difficult to separate ritual and drama. Therefore, drama exists in traditional performances. Festivals are important in Nigerian traditional society. Let's quickly look at the rest. Ritual is an honest act which follows a particular pattern, is performed for a particular effect, and in accordance with the tradition. In the Nigerian traditional communities, ancestral worship is very common. Deceased relatives, especially the elders, are regarded as ancestors and are believed to have some influence on the younger generations. People, therefore, are conscious not to offend their ancestors, but whenever such thing happens, such ancestors are appeased. Apart from the appeasement, ancestors are invoked or revered from time to time as the occasion demands to intercede or intervene for the living in some critical moments. In most traditional African societies, masquerades are seen as gods or heroic ancestors. They take different forms and there are many varieties depending on the region, the purpose, the content, and the pattern. They are usually masked figures of various kinds. A mask is a covering or disguise used to transform the identity of the individual or the wearer into that of another character. So, there is an element of impersonation. In traditional African societies, we can identify different types of masks according to their functions based on the areas of the body covered. In traditional African society, storytelling is in some cases seen as theater. Stories are told as forms of entertainment. These stories are often enacted in the sense that, to a greater or smaller degree, the speech and gestures of their characters are imitated by the narrator, and the action is largely exhibited through dialogue. Carnival is a public celebration that is held periodically at a particular time of the year. It involves the community appearing in groups according to affiliations like age grades or families. Each group tries to beat the other group in their presentations, which involve flamboyant costumes, music, and dance. Puppets are models of human beings or animals that are manipulated to move by means of devices. These devices could be human hands or strings. These models are created according to the rules and the stories to be presented. Popular theatre is a form of theatre that is commonly approved and widely liked by the common people in a given community. Most of the traditional performances are embedded in music and dance. We have decided to discuss them separately because they on their own are forms of traditional performances.